Today, we have a story that honestly feels less like financial reporting and more like a script for some kind of bizarre action movie.
It really does.
We're going to be tracking the flow of this massive, and I mean massive, amount of modern cyber scam money. We're talking billions. It starts with this colossal bust in Singapore, and then it jumps across the world straight into the heart of London.
And this story is, well, it's the perfect illustration of how global financial crime really operates today. We've gone through the reporting from some great sources, the OCCRP, the Straits Times, and they've managed to trace not just the usual things, cash and property,
Right.
but also ancient Chinese art. And this is the part that's just unbelievable. Multi-million-dollar fossilized dinosaur skeletons.
It's incredible. So our mission for you, the learner, is to really map this movement of money and assets. We want to understand the initial, just staggering scale of that Singapore investigation. And then we're going to track two key figures. These names are Binghai and Sioux Empire, because they execute this rapid cross-continental flight and immediately start converting their, let's call it questionable liquid wealth, into the hardest assets money can buy in the UK.
And it really is a masterclass in asset diversification when you're under extreme duress.
Yeah.
You have to picture it. These guys are facing a potential multi-billion-dollar investigation back in Asia.
Yeah.
And they immediately activate what looks like a pre-planned, very sophisticated legal and financial setup in the West. They don't go into hiding. They do the opposite. They double down and start buying up everything they can.
And before we get into the $2.3 billion in seized assets that kicks this whole thing off, we have to start with the single most absurd detail. It's the thing that just defines this entire deep dive.
I know exactly where you're going with this.
It's the moment the British authorities, they're going through the inventory list of what they've seized. And on that list are 3 complete fossilized dinosaur skeletons valued at a staggering 12.4 million British pounds. That's about 16 million US dollars.
It's mind-boggling. 3 complete dinosaurs, a juvenile Allosaurus, its mother Allosaurus, and a Stegosaurus.
Yeah.
It just completely challenges what you think of as a safe asset for money laundering.
Right. You think of, bearer bonds, diamonds, maybe a Picasso.
Exactly. Something you can stick in a briefcase. But a complete multi-ton Mesozoic relic, that takes conspicuous consumption to a whole new level.
Okay, so let's really unpack this. How does money that's generated from anonymous illegal online gambling and these complex cyber scams in Asia, how does that translate within weeks into owning irreplaceable natural history trophies stored in a vault somewhere in London?
That's the core question, isn't it?
Yeah, that tension. The modern anonymous digital crime meeting this very physical, very ancient artifact. That's what we're going to try and answer today.
Right, so to really grasp the significance of what they bought in London, we have to appreciate the scale of what they were running from. And it all starts in Singapore, which, is this global financial hub. It's known for stability, for its really rigorous legal system. And yet, even there, this massive network was able to just flourish.
So the key date here is August 15th, 2023. This is when Singaporean law enforcement launches what is now, recognized as the nation's largest ever money laundering bust.
And the scope of the operation alone tells you how important this was. They had 400 police officers involved in these coordinated raids all across the island.
400. Wow.
400. And they needed that kind of coordination because they were targeting a network that was incredibly wealthy and crucially globally connected. The sheer scale of what they seized is hard to even visualize.
What's the final number?
The total assets they impounded came to $2.3 billion.
A billion, with a B.
With a B, a figure like that. It speaks to years of a highly profitable, very sophisticated criminal enterprise.
And the sources are really clear about where this money was coming from, right? It wasn't legitimate business.
Not at all. It was the illicit proceeds of illegal gambling operations and a whole bunch of these complex cyber scam schemes. And they were primarily targeting markets outside of Singapore.
So they were using Singapore's financial system almost like a pipeline, a place to wash the funds.
Exactly, a pipeline and what they thought was a safe harbor for cleaning those funds.
And what's really revealing is when you look at the loot list, the list of what was actually seized, it gives you this stark picture of how these criminals were living.
Yeah, this wasn't about just, hoarding cash in a mattress. It was about integrating all that wealth into the high-end consumer economy to sort of normalize their presence.
Let's run through that list because it is just astonishingly comprehensive. They seized over 150 properties.
Just think about that. 150 properties. That is a massive investment in real estate, and it clearly shows an attempt to convert that liquid traceable cash into property, which is much harder to trace and move.
And then beyond the property, which is, slow to move, they also had the really portable stuff.
Right. They seized 68 gold bars. That's the universal, untraceable store of value. And of course, vast amounts of physical cash and various cryptocurrencies. It shows they were operating across every kind of financial exchange.
And then there are the items that just scream high net worth lifestyle. We're talking 546 pieces of jewelry.
546.
And 62 high-value vehicles. The kind of cars you see parked right out front of the most exclusive clubs.
And the sources confirm that's exactly how they were living. The 10 people they arrested, all Chinese nationals holding various other passports. They weren't hiding in the shadows. They were living these very ostentatious lives in upmarket neighborhoods, belonging to prestigious golf clubs.
So they were hiding in plain sight.
That's the thing. That combination, the opulence, the complex corporate structures, and the multiple foreign passports, is what makes these networks so hard to target. They successfully projected this image of being legitimate international business people. And that gets you access.
Access to the banks and the systems that maybe don't ask as many questions.
Precisely.
But as you said, our focus here narrows down to two men who were connected to this ring, but who weren't actually among those 10 arrested in that initial August sweep.
Right. Sioux Binghai and Sioux Haika.
Let's start with Sioux Binghai. So the raids happen August 15th. At that exact moment, he's not technically a formal suspect, is he?
No, but he was immediately identified as a person of interest. The Singapore Police Force, the SPF, wanted to bring him in for questioning about the network. They knew he was connected.
And this is where the timeline gets really, really sharp. The sources, they managed to interview a domestic worker at Sioux Binghai's home in Singapore.
Yeah, and she gave this key piece of information. She confirmed that just a few weeks after those huge August raids, more than 10 uniformed police officers showed up at the property, and they were specifically looking for her employer.
Which confirms he was absolutely on their radar.
And that he was moving fast. The timeline is crystal clear. Sioux Binghai left Singapore immediately after the August 15th raids, just ahead of that police visit. He had this very, very narrow window to get out of the country and escape that immediate legal net.
But the remarkable thing is, he doesn't just disappear. He doesn't go hide on a remote island.
No.
He and his associate, Shuhaika, they execute this coordinated, almost rapid-fire spending spree in one of the most visible high-end real estate markets in the entire world.
London.
London.
Yeah.
So let's track that transition. You've got the sheer financial violence of the bust in Singapore. That's got to prompt this immediate, almost panic need to move your assets and find a new base, right?
It has to. And for both Sioux Binghai and Shuhaika, the destination was central London.
And that coordinated movement is so critical here. They both leave Singapore right after the police actions in August 2023. And what they do next in London, it really shows they had a pre-existing plan for capital flight.
This wasn't just them fleeing and then figuring it out. They were executing stage 2 of their wealth preservation strategy. They start this huge real estate buying spree between March and late August of 2023.
And you've got to stress the nature of these purchases. I mean, they're not buying a nice house in the suburbs.
No, not at all. They're buying dense investment portfolios in these prime new build developments, the kind specifically designed for international investors who value security, status, and, anonymity.
So let's break it down man by man. Let's start with Yuhaika. The Singapore police say he is still actively under investigation.
Right. His total spend was immense. We're talking 24.7 million pounds. That's just under 31 million US dollars. And his strategy seems to have been about quantity and strategic location.
And he didn't just buy one or two places.
No. Zhuhaika purchased 16 separate units.
16.
16, spread across 2 adjacent new build developments at 1 and 2 Fareham Street. That's a staggering amount of central London real estate to just snap up in such a short period.
And the location. Tell us about the location.
The location detail is key. Fareham Street is right off Oxford Street. It literally sits directly above the massive new Elizabeth Line tube station at Tottenham Court Road.
So it's a transport hub.
It screams connectivity, desirability, high rental yields. It is the very definition of a blue-chip London investment designed to hold its value no matter what's happening in the global economy.
Buying 16 units in buildings right next to each other, that feels like more than just investing. It's about controlling a significant chunk of a single investment block.
That's a great point. It allows the money to be broken up into smaller, maybe less suspicious chunks, but you're still securing this massive overall value, and you instantly start generating rental income, which helps to further legitimize the funds.
Okay, so that's Shu Haika. Now let's turn to Su Binghai, the person of interest who is just one step ahead of the police in Singapore.
His total spend was also substantial, 15.8 million pounds, which is about $20.2 million. And he pursued the exact same luxury new build strategy.
So he acquires 9 luxury apartments. And these are in a very exclusive development called the Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
And if Shu Haika's location was prime, Su Binghai's was, yeah,
Well, yeah,
audacious.
absolutely audacious. The Broadway development is situated right next to St. James's Park. You are literally a short walk, a stone's throw, as they say, from two of the UK's most recognizable global symbols,
Sure.
Buckingham Palace and Big Ben. This is the absolute apex of political and geographical prestige in London.
So just to be clear, these men were laundering millions of dollars right under the nose of what, the royal family's security detail, the level of confidence there, or maybe hubris. It's just astonishing.
But the real kicker, the truly stunning part,
Mm-hmm.
is the timing of Su Binghai's purchases.
Okay.
The police bust in Singapore was on August 15, 2023. The sources confirmed that all 9 of his luxury units in the Broadway were purchased on August 22, 2023.
Like 1 week.
1 week.
Just 7 days after the biggest money laundering crackdown in Singapore's history, this guy, this person of interest, is finalizing the purchase of $20 million worth of prime London property.
The speed is incredible. It implies the funds were either already staged and primed in London, or they were moved through some ultra-efficient means. Crypto or rapid wire transfers through the corporate structures we're going to talk about later.
This is a textbook, high-speed conversion of assets that are under threat. It shows that sophisticated criminals, they don't treat money laundering as this slow, quiet process.
No, it's an instantaneous act of financial self-defense. They know the second they're exposed, they have to convert liquid assets into hard assets in a jurisdiction they see as friendly, or at least slow to act.
So let's put it all together. Combined, these two men spent at least 40.5 million British pounds, that's over 51 million US dollars, on 25 luxury apartments in central London.
And remember that the sources also noted that Su Binghai was investing heavily in Dubai real estate as well. So London was just one part of this multi-jurisdictional financial escape plan.
Okay, so let's leave the bricks and mortar behind for a minute, because this is where the story pivots from, standard, if shady, real estate investment into something else entirely. Outright trophy assets.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Exactly. Su Binghai didn't just want apartments. He wanted history.
That's right. Property is, relatively common in these circles. But the UK's National Crime Agency, the NCA, they started tracking the assets held by Su Binghai, and they discovered this unique fascination he had with high-value collectibles. Specifically, natural history and ancient art.
So let's get into the details of this Mesozoic haul. The purchase price for this specific collection, which is what ultimately led to it being seized by the NCA, was £12.4 million.
The $16 million we mentioned at the top.
That's the one.
And what the NCA seized was, well, it was 3 complete fossilized dinosaur skeletons. And to be clear, these weren't just, a box of scattered bones. These were display-ready, high-value skeletons.
What were they?
A juvenile and a mother Allosaurus found together, and a Stegosaurus. These are assets that are incredibly rare, culturally significant, and they hold this highly subjective but immensely high market value.
It just raises the immediate question, why a dinosaur skeleton? I mean, surely this is the least subtle asset you could possibly acquire. Why that over, say, a dozen Picassos, which might be easier to hide or move around?
That is a great question. And the answer, I think, lies in the specific utility of this very niche market for money laundering.
Okay.
First, the provenance, the history of ownership for items like this is often very poorly documented, especially if you buy through a private sale or a less regulated auction house. Second, their valuation is subjective. That allows a buyer to easily over or under declare the price, which helps facilitate the transfer of funds.
And I guess critically.
And critically, once you own a dinosaur skeleton, its value is encased in a physical object that is surprisingly highly portable. It can be crated up, it's easy to store securely, and it's instantly liquidatable in another country years down the line. It's an asset that is completely severed from the banking system.
And it wasn't just the fossils. Su Binghai also bought a collection of 11 Chinese artworks.
Right, for over $500,000 at auction. This included really culturally significant items. We're talking Ming-era vases, bronze swords. It shows a clear pattern.
Which is what?
Converting these untraceable liquid funds into tangible, high-value objects of cultural or historical importance. It's a strategy often called asset conversion, and it's a brilliant way to clean money.
How so?
Because the value is established by the collectible market, which makes the source of the funds seem legitimate. You buy it with dirty money, you store it, and then years later you sell it to a clean buyer, and the money you get back is clean.
So how did the UK authorities manage to catch assets that are so specialized and unique? This is where the legal machinery of the NCA really comes into play.
They use some incredibly powerful and targeted legislation, primarily something called the Proceeds of Crime Act, or POCA.
Okay, what's BOCA?
POCA is basically the UK's overarching legal framework that lets authorities recover suspected criminal assets. And it's a civil recovery mechanism. This is important. It means they don't necessarily need a criminal conviction of the individual to seize the goods.
So what do they need?
They just need to prove that the assets are likely derived from unlawful conduct. The burden of proof is lower than in a criminal case.
The head of the NCA's asset denial team, a guy named Rob Burgess, he summed it up perfectly in their statement about this seizure. He said, and I'm quoting here, "The result is the same, be it cash, houses, or dinosaur bones, preventing people benefiting from the proceeds of crime."
And that one line confirms everything. It confirms that the UK legal system is adapting to how fluid criminal wealth has become. It doesn't matter if the asset is geological, digital, or physical. If the source is criminal, the asset can be taken.
But the NCA didn't just rely on standard POCA measures, did they? They used a very specialized tool against Su Binghai.
They did. An unexplained wealth order, or a UWO.
Okay, I've heard of these. Explain what a UWO is.
It's one of the most powerful legal instruments that UK authorities have in the fight against dirty money. And what it does, essentially, is it shifts the burden of proof.
How so?
Normally, the state has to prove the money is criminal. With a UWO, the subject, in this case Su Binghai, is legally required to provide satisfactory evidence demonstrating the legitimate source of the funds he used to buy the assets.
So if you can't prove how you legitimately earned $16 million to buy 3 dinosaur skeletons, the state can just take them.
That's exactly it. When you're dealing with laundered funds from these complex international cyber scams, tracing the money all the way back to the original victim is nearly impossible.
Right.
The UWO bypasses that complexity. It just focuses on the recipient. It says, show us your tax returns, show us your business profits, show us your legitimate income. And if you fail to provide a satisfactory explanation, the authorities can move forward with forfeiture. It's a tool designed specifically for this kind of globe-trotting wealth of suspicious origin.
And the NCA applied this across the board. They didn't just go after the fossils and the art.
No, they also got a freezing order on Su Binghai's 9 luxury apartments in the Broadway. They secured that real estate portion of his London holdings as far back as April of this year.
And the freezing order it locks everything down.
It prevents any sale, any transfer. It locks down the assets while the whole forfeiture process moves forward, which ensures the money can't just be moved again to another jurisdiction, like his holdings in Dubai.
Okay, now, we have to address this peculiar detail in Su Binghai's final settlement with the NCA. He agrees to forfeit the assets, but the agreement allows him to keep 25% of the profits from the eventual sales. That seems strange.
It's a point that definitely raises eyebrows, yes.
Yeah.
While he agreed to surrender the properties, the dinosaur bones, the artifacts, and he even repaid about $450,000 in rental income he'd already collected, that 25% retention clause is unusual.
Why would they do that?
It suggests a very pragmatic, negotiated settlement. These things can often expedite the recovery of the bulk of the assets. You avoid years of expensive and complex litigation that could tie everything up indefinitely.
So it's a trade-off.
Precisely. By offering him a minority stake in the sale proceeds, the NCA secured his immediate and full cooperation on the bulk of the assets, including those very unique, hard-to-value dinosaur skeletons, without having to fight this protracted legal battle over every single transaction. It's a compromise. It favors immediate asset recovery, even if it means the subject gets to keep a small piece of the value.
Ugh.
The reason this whole operation was so difficult to trace in the first place, and why the UK needed these powerful tools like the UWO, it's all because of the sophisticated corporate camouflage these guys were using.
Right.
And the heart of that camouflage is this global phenomena of citizenship for investment, or CDI passports.
This is the passport problem, the ability to essentially buy a new identity, a new legal jurisdiction to operate from.
Exactly. And the sources reveal that these massive property deals, the movement of funds, none of it was facilitated by their original Chinese passports or even their subsequent Cambodian ones. It was all done using passports acquired through these CBI programs.
Let's get into the specifics, because that's crucial for understanding how this corporate opacity works.
Okay, so Su Binghai, he already held passports from China and Cambodia, but he used a passport from the Caribbean nation of St. Kitts and Nevis to set up his UK companies.
Including one called Sioux Empire LTD, which is the company that bought the 9 luxury apartments.
That's the one. And then you have his associate, Shu Haika. He also held Chinese and Cambodian citizenship, but he used a passport from the Pacific island nation of Vanuatu to set up his UK companies, which bought those 16 units off Oxford Street.
Just think about the practical effect of that. When Su Binghai goes to register Sioux Empire LTD in the UK, the official documents list the director and beneficial owner as a citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis.
And that creates an immediate firewall. It makes it extremely difficult for investigators to quickly connect that legal identity in London back to a person of interest that the police in Singapore are looking for in connection with Asian cyber scams.
So the CBI passports, they grant this kind of instant legitimacy in global financial markets, but they also create these layers of anonymity. It helps them get around the routine know your customer or KYC checks.
Completely. A bank would likely flag high-volume transactions coming from someone tied to mainland Chinese banking systems, but from a citizen of St. Kitts and Nevis? Maybe not.
And these CBI nations are often chosen because their due diligence standards can be less rigorous.
Less rigorous. And their corporate registries often offer much greater privacy, which just frustrates any cross-border investigation. It's an absolutely essential cog in the machine of global money laundering.
And beyond the passports, let's look at Su Binghai's actual corporate ties, because they provide a direct link right back to the epicenter of this crime ring.
That's right. Su Binghai founded a Hong Kong-based private equity firm called New Future International back in 2017. And the key connection emerged when he became a co-owner of this firm with a man named Wang Dehai.
And Wang Dehai is?
Wang Dehai is one of the 10 individuals who was ultimately convicted in that core Singapore money laundering case.
So there it is, a direct corporate link between the man who fled and one of the men who was arrested. Even though New Future International itself hasn't been officially named in the investigation, that co-ownership speaks volumes about how intertwined their finances were.
And the investigative reporters did a fantastic job tracing the alleged corporate footprint of this company. When they visited its registered address in Hong Kong,
What did they find?
they found another firm called Straits Alliance, which is just a virtual office address provider. An employee there confirmed that New Future only pays to use the location as its mailing address.
So no real office, no employees.
No genuine physical presence. It's a classic characteristic of a shell company, designed solely to process transactions and provide a legitimate-looking paper trail without any real business operations.
So we've got this global corporate web in place. Let's bring the story full circle. Back to Singapore. What was the ultimate legal resolution for Su Binghai there?
So the resolution in Singapore was finalized in October of 2024. Su Binghai and his wife, they agreed to a major forfeiture. They surrendered at least $243 million in assets to the Singaporean government.
$250 million. That's a massive financial hit. But this was a settlement, right? Not a conviction?
Correct, a settlement.
So what did he get in return for giving up such a huge sum of money?
In exchange for forfeiting that immense amount, Su Binghai was removed from all Interpol watch lists, and he was formally barred from ever returning to Singapore.
So Singapore's primary goal was just getting the illicit capital back.
It seems so. This agreement secured that objective for them, and it legally closed their case against him. It's almost like they allowed him to buy his freedom from immediate prosecution and travel restrictions as long as he left a substantial chunk of his ill-gotten gains behind.
It's one way to look at it, yeah. It shows a country prioritizing asset recovery over the, long, expensive, and uncertain process of extradition and a full criminal prosecution.
But the international investigation isn't completely closed. The Singapore police force, the SPF, they confirmed something very interesting.
Which was?
They confirmed that while they were successful domestically, they haven't explicitly found evidence that proves the UK properties, the ones bought by Binghai in Juhaika, were purchased with criminal proceeds specifically traceable back to that August 15th bust.
That's a crucial distinction, isn't it? It doesn't mean the money was clean.
Not at all. It just means the money was likely generated by the same overall illegal network over a longer period of time. Or maybe it was funneled from a completely different parallel illicit enterprise that the SBF wasn't tracking.
Once that money enters the global financial system and gets laundered through multiple shell companies and CBI passports, tracing it back to a specific, localized crime becomes nearly impossible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the SBF did signal their continued interest. They confirmed, and I'm quoting, they will engage our counterparts for assistance where necessary. This confirms there's ongoing collaboration between Singapore and the NCA in the UK. They recognize that untangling the full scope of this operation requires a huge international effort. So if we synthesize this entire case study for you, the learner, what really emerges is this sophisticated roadmap of how global financial criminals manage a crisis. This case perfectly illustrates the dynamic tension between different jurisdictions and the incredible speed that's required for what is essentially financial defense.
It's like a clear three-step playbook for survival, isn't it? Step 1, use those citizenship for investment passports to create immediate anonymity. Set up these clean, paper-only corporate structures like Sioux Empire LTD in stable Western jurisdictions. That's your legal and geographic firewall.
Right. Then step 2, when the heat turns up at home, like it did during the Singapore bust, you execute a near-instantaneous flight. You shift your liquid funds rapidly across borders into what you see as safe harbors. London, Dubai. The speed is everything. They had a week.
And then step 3, you convert that liquid wealth immediately into hard, high-value, and specialized physical goods. That means the highly desirable luxury property that generates legitimate rental income. And crucially, these exotic collectibles. Ancient art, and, of course, those astonishing multi-million-dollar fossilized dinosaur skeletons.
And the contrast between the two main legal actions taken here is so instructive for anti-money laundering efforts around the world. Singapore focused heavily on the scale and the origin of the crime.
The illegal gambling and the cyber scams.
Exactly. That led to the massive $2.3 billion domestic bust and the eventual $250 million settlement. Their goal was damage control at the source.
Whereas the UK was focused entirely on the destination of the money. They used these specialized non-criminal legal tools like the Unexplained Wealth Order and the Proceeds of Crime Act to target the specific and very unusual assets that had been bought on British soil.
They didn't need to prove the cyber scam. They just needed Binghai to fail to prove where his legitimate income came from.
And this dual approach, it really shows that fighting global financial crime is this complex game of whack-a-mole. Countries have to develop these distinct legal arsenals, one that's focused on prosecuting the crime itself and another that's focused solely on seizing the assets no matter what form they take. So this whole deep dive, the money, the mayhem, and these Mesozoic relics, it really leaves us with one powerful, persistent thought for you to consider.
If $16 million worth of dinosaur bones, along with Ming-era vases and bronze swords, were purchased with criminal money, and they were only discovered years later, and almost by accident, through an unrelated money laundering investigation that started halfway across the globe, what does that tell us?
What does that tell us about the broader, highly unregulated global secondary market for exotic collectibles?
Exactly.
We're talking about everything. Prehistoric fossils, rare art, classic cars, high-end watches. If criminal money can so easily purchase these items, and they're only discovered incidentally years after the fact, how much of the world's hidden illicit wealth is now stored not in traditional bank accounts or opaque real estate funds, but encased in objects of deep scientific, cultural, or historical value?
It raises this critical and frankly chilling question. What other strange multi-million-dollar treasures might be out there right now, hiding in plain sight, bought with illicit funds that just haven't been traced back to their origins yet?
And maybe, should the global collectibles market be treated with the same level of legal and regulatory scrutiny as the banking system? That's something for you to mull over and explore on your own.
We'll catch you next time for the deep dive.